Eli Campbell here. One thing that makes Steamboat special is how many awe-inspiring people call our valley home. You could find yourself in line at the coffee shop next to an Olympian, or sitting on the gondola next to the founder of a world-renowned business. Our community produces and attracts the best of the best in their respective fields, but most are so humble about it you would never know. These extraordinary people are the common folk in the boat. Welcome to Common Folk in the Boat, presented by Billo Premium Cannabis. I'm Eli Campbell. Normally, I'm joined by Dave Whitlinger from Billo, who always adds some extra color and witty banter to our conversations. But like a lot of folks in the Yampa Valley right now, Dave's feeling a little under the weather, so I'm flying solo today. Still, I want to give a big shout out to Billo for supporting our podcast since day one. They've always appreciated our mission to highlight the people who make this community special. Now, each episode, we usually kick things off by asking Dave, what is Billo high on this week? It's a chance to hear about new products, what's going on at the shop, local events that Billo is feeling good about. Since Dave isn't here, I'm going to actually share a personal story instead, one that really speaks to what Billo is all about. A close family member of mine has been struggling with pain related to a combat injury and Agent Orange exposure from the Vietnam War. So a few weeks ago, he asked me about CBD options. I'll be honest, I'm no expert, but I did know where to send him. One of Billo's guiding principles is to empower you to feel exactly how you want by making cannabis easier to understand. So I told him to visit the shop, ask some questions, get some advice from the pros. This was his first time in a dispensary. He wasn't really sure what to expect, especially since all he wanted was relief for his joints. But the folks at Billo took the time to listen, answer his questions, and guide him toward the right solution, whether that meant a pure CBD option or something with a touch of THC to enhance the benefits. In the end, he walked out with confidence and, more importantly, a way to feel better day to day. So I guess that's what I'm high on this week, Billo, helping someone I care about to live a more comfortable life. I'm sure Dave would have more to add to that, and hopefully he'll be back for our next episode. But now on to today's show. This week I hit the road. We normally broadcast from Dusky Grouse. I actually went out to Dell's Triangle 3 Ranch to visit a true local legend, a man whose family roots in the Yampa Valley stretch back to the 1800s. Now, when you think of cowboys and skiing in the Yampa Valley, usually you think of Billy Kid. Of course, he's famous for skiing in that cowboy hat. But the man that I sat down with this week, I'd say he was the original cowboy skier of Steamboat Springs. We're going to be talking to the man behind the duster, Ray Heid. Stick around. You're about to hear some incredible stories from Steamboat's past before it was Ski Town, USA. Welcome back to Common Folk in the Boat. Eli Campbell here with you, and I am sitting up here at Dell's Triangle 3 Ranch. We are getting set to talk to a truly legendary local figure, Mr. Ray Heid. How are you doing today?
Well, in my mind, I'm a legend.
Hey, you're a legend in my mind as well. Many Steamboat locals have you in that legendary status. There's a few people, the Werners, who you're related to, Billy Kid, and of course Ray Heid, the man in the duster. How does it feel to be thought of as a local legend?
You know, it was surprising because I've told some of these stories over and over and over again, but I never thought of getting them broadcast to anybody but the 4 or 5 people behind me on the horse. And when this came up, I thought, boy, this is a chance to tell my stories that I tell every day almost when I'm on the trail. And I don't like people to come out to go on a horseback ride just to be, I went on a horseback ride. I want to know that they did something unique and different.
Yeah.
And when they get to Dell's Triangle 3 Ranch, it doesn't take them long to realize this is real.
Yeah, I have to say, I've been on a horseback ride here at Dell's Triangle 3 Ranch, and it's part of the experience is getting to know the local history, the lore. You're a 4th generation Steamboat Springs born resident. It's unbelievable. Someone that born in 1937 is fourth generation. Can you tell me just a little bit to begin with how the Heid family even came to the Yampa Valley?
Well, my great-grandfather, Grouse Creek Jones, was working in a gold camp over out of Leadville. And he said he wanted to spread out. And so he got on a horse and he rode from Climax over to Steamboat. And when he got to the second or third stagecoach stop, at State Bridge, my grandmother was she had heard that one of her children was critically ill. And so the trains couldn't run, the snow was too deep, the stagecoach definitely couldn't run. And so she went down and rented a horse and headed home by herself in a blizzard that was unreal. And when she finally got to State Bridge, Ferry Carpenter was there waiting for the stage or the train or anything to come through. And he said, "I'm not going to let you go any further by yourself. I'm going to go with you." So the two of them headed to Steamboat, and even though my grandfather and my great-grandfather both drove the freight line and the stagecoach, my Grandma Ralston knew the trains, knew where she was going, and knew a lot of the families along the way. So it was pretty convenient, but at that time the snow was so deep, they had to get off their horses and drag them through the snow. And Grandma was a little gal. She was only 5 feet tall. But they had the stagecoach stop and the freight line stop at the bottom of Yellow Jacket Pass. As you turn to go over to Stagecoach Reservoir and you start up that hill, there's a big red barn on your right-hand side. And that was my great-grandfather, Grouse Creek Jones's ranch, because that's Grouse Creek that comes down through there. And so it got to be, in fact, the outhouse for the stagecoach stop was a three-holer. When people got off that stage, they had to go to bed. And I remember the toilet paper was a Sears and Roebuck catalog. And well, there was another stagecoach stop up by the Stagecoach Reservoir, which wasn't even there at the time. But that's where the road split down by what is now the Stagecoach Reservoir, and then up over what they call Yellow Jacket Pass, because it was just packed with yellow jackets. You couldn't get a horse through there without getting stunned.
I've always wondered why that was named Yellow Jacket Pass.
Grouse Creek Jones's ranch was right at the north end of that pass. As you come down off the hill and make a turn, you'll see that big red barn over there. And it burned in 1917, and they had to rebuild it. And on the northwest corner, the bottom log in that corner has a date on it, 1917.
Wow.
When it was rebuilt. And they'd switch horses there and let the people get out and relieve themselves. And then it would head from there on down what we call River Road now.
Yeah.
And there was actually a bridge there in Brooklyn. And then from there it went on up into Steamboat. But at that time, Steamboat was dry. You couldn't buy or sell liquor in Steamboat. But Brooklyn, you could always go across the river to Brooklyn and get whatever you wanted.
There's a little history to why it's called Brooklyn.
Yes, that happened.
It was 1937 when you were born. You were born in your house, in your living room, in Steamboat Springs. And I find it interesting. I've had the opportunity to talk to Cookie Lockhart and to Jay Fetcher about kind of growing up here back in the 1940s. They always talk about the small town charm of the area. You yourself refer to yourself as the city kid because you were always kind of looking to be more in the rural lands, even though you were from Steamboat. How much of a city really was Steamboat in your mind back when you were growing up?
Well, people always ask me, well, you know, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm a city kid. From what city? I said, I was born and raised on 441 Hill Street in downtown Steamboat Springs in our living room. My grandmother, Eva Ralston, was the midwife to almost all the children born in the country. And at that time, Hazy Warner, which was Hazy Ralston then, was the oldest. And she would always go along with Grandma Ralston when she was going to deliver somebody's child. And Hazy would always write in her diary when they were born, who their parents were, and the whole thing. And when some of those kids got to be 16 and wanted to get a driver's license, they went to the courthouse and discovered they didn't have a birth certificate. But if they'd go get Hazy's diary, that's all they needed for proof of who they were born, who their parents were.
It's a different day now. I just went and got my kids' passports renewed, and just to get them renewed, you need to go through a whole process. I don't think a diary would have sufficed, but back then it was Hazy's Werner's word was all you needed.
That's right. Yeah. It was in print. I think she started that diary when she was 6 years old. She may have been even a little younger. And so it was used as the official authenticity of where they were born and who their parents were, and the whole thing. And in those days, only one telephone office, and it was actually right across the street from the Harbor Hotel. There's a restaurant there right now, but that was the telephone office. And when you picked up the telephone, the operator would say, "Number, please." And like, our grocery store number was 36, and that was the license plate on my dad's car. Boggs Hardware telephone number was 28, and that was the license plate on all their vehicles. And you pick up the phone, and, "Number, please," and you give the telephone number, and as it started ringing, you hear that click. The other people picking up the phone because the light went on the wall. The phone was in a little square box on the wall that you held onto the earpiece. And oh boy, Ray's calling. Joe Simonton. Let's listen.
let's catch all the dirt, see what's going on.
Yeah. My dad was always. We owned the Boys Market, which was a supermarket. And actually, when Pop sold the store to FM Lights, they took the wall out between the Boys Market and FM Lights and made their store twice as big. But at that time, Grandpa Heid knew that his two boys, Timer Heid and Bob Heid, were going to take it over. So he changed the name to the Boys Market in downtown Steamboat. And it was... I mean, we had to go to Denver 2 and 3 times a week and haul our own groceries into the store from Denver. We'd go around to every little manufacturer in Denver and load up the truck. Twice, sometimes 3 times a week to because there was no way to get the groceries into town if you didn't do it yourself. And it got to be really unique. In fact, There's a picture in my book of my dad standing in the Boys Market when it was actually the east half of FM Light and Sun store at that time. And in those days, my cousin, Bobby Ralston, had the newspaper delivery. He'd get it every evening. And in the wintertime, we'd put it on a sled, right behind his car, and all the newspapers were in it, and we'd be ski joring behind it. We'd ski in, get a newspaper off the sled, go up over the bank, throw it on somebody's porch, go back over the bank, get another newspaper, and we delivered the paper ski joring all winter long.
The ski joring is a big part of the winter carnival. Back in those days, it was a part of life to deliver papers and make money.
Yeah.
And now we're celebrating it, pulling kids behind horses and off of donkey jumps. Was that something that you were doing in the winter carnival back in those days too?
Yeah, we always had a donkey. In fact, we had a donkey jump on every hill. There was one on Crawford Hill. We had a donkey jump there. We had another one on Withers Hill, which is right behind our house on Oak Street and Butcher Knife Creek. And then we had another one up the river a little ways, which is right behind the Barrows house. And these donkey jumps weren't for anything to see how high you could go. Had nothing to do with your form or distance or anything else. It was just a kicker that shot you straight up in the air. But in those days, they didn't haul the snow off the street. They just plowed it back. So the snow banks were taller than the top of a car. So for the winter carnival, they would let the school out for 3 days to go pick out the spot in the snowbank to make their snow sculptures. When the snow was that deep and people couldn't get around, they'd pick up the phone and call 36 or the grocery store, and Hazy Warner was our checkout lady, but she knew just about everybody in town, what they'd been eating, what they needed. She'd pack it up. We had an old van, and we would go to everybody's house and go around the back, slide off the roof into the back porch, put the frozen stuff in the ice box in the window that was just open with screens that you could keep everything frozen. And so we'd drop it, put everything in there, and leave them a bill, and go to the next house and deliver the groceries to everybody's house. And I was in the gondola 20 years or more ago, and I was talking to somebody, and one of the ladies in the gondola said, "You must be one of Bob Hyde's boys." I said, "Yeah, I'm Ray Heid." "Well, you've delivered groceries to my house." And I said, "Now, what's your name?" I think she said, "Mrs. Combs." I said, "You live just below the Lithia Springs." And she said, "Oh, we knew everybody. We knew their groceries. We knew how they shopped and everything else."
Now, growing up, skiing also became a big part of your life. You were put on skis at 3 years old, I believe. You ended up kind of being a four-way athlete with
everybody. At that time, we got a grade on our report card in school. And they let school out every day at 2 o'clock, and you had to be at the ski area and check in at 2:30. You had a half an hour to get from the school to the ski hill. And then we had downhill slalom, jumping, and cross country. And we'd have usually downhill on Monday, and then jumping on Tuesday, and then downhill and slalom on Wednesday and Thursday, and then we'd take off and go to a ski race somewhere, usually to Hot Sulphur Springs or Winter Park. And then my dad, Bob Hyde, was the jumping judge. In fact, he was the only American jumping judge in the 1960 Olympics. But he was hauling all these kids to every tournament because they'd pay his expenses as a judge. And so he had always, every year he'd buy the Pontiac dealer's car. They'd run it for 2 years and then get another one. So Pop would always buy that one. So he always had a new Pontiac to haul those kids to every ski race you can imagine, from Leavenworth, Washington to Lake Placid, New York.
Oh, wow.
Driving all of it.
all the way from one end of the country to the other. That's incredible. Now, you mentioned that you got a grade in school for skiing. How I'm assuming, given that you did pretty all right skiing, that was a good grade for you.
Yeah, you got a grade in downhill slalom, jumping, and cross country. And boy, if you were late, you got a hell of a chew out. You didn't get to ride the lift to go back to the start. You had to hike back up. Nobody showed up late.
Were your parents more interested in what your school grades were or your skiing grades?
The only 4 A's I ever got in my entire life in school was in skiing.
You know, in this town, if you're going to get A's, you might as well get them in skiing.
Yeah, and even before school, we were old enough to go to school. Mom would take us over the hill in the morning about 9 o'clock with our lunch and leave us. And she either go home and do what she was doing at that time. A little later, she was a volunteer nurse for everybody outside of town. And then us kids would spend all day skiing. All we had was a boat tow. And you'd get on the boat tow and wave your arm, and that boat would take off. And there was a bull wheel on top and a bull wheel on the bottom. And if you wanted to get off, you waved and it stopped the boat tow. You had to wait because that cable was usually 40 feet in the air coming the other way. So you had to wait till the cable settled down, and you couldn't cross. So they rang a little bell down below, then you'd go across. I'd go back on the face of house and hill, lay my skis down on the snow, and lay down on them. And there's a picture in a book of Buddy Warner and I both sitting on our skis at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah.
But no, Buddy was such an unreal athlete. It was just... Hazy had 3 children, Skeeter, Buddy, and Loris. And Mom had 3 boys,
Yep.
Corky, Ray, and Delby. And but by far, Skeeter ruled. You didn't date a girl that Skeeter didn't approve of.
Ruled in town like that and on the mountain as well. Obviously, a lot of Olympic heritage there in that family. You yourself were an alternate for the 1960 Olympics, which were the first Olympics to be televised, the Winter Olympics. And of all of the athletes, even though you were just an alternate, you might have gotten more television airtime.
I wasn't even an alternate. I had missed the team just barely, and was getting ready to start when I turned to Delby, my little brother, and I said, let's go out and watch Squaw Valley. So no matter where I went, because we skied in every little place in America that had a jumping hill, we jumped on it. So I might have skis, we'll jump. And we'd get in the old car, and we pulled into Squaw Valley, the opening day of the Olympics. And my dad was the only American jumping judge, and he came up to me and he said, Ray, did you bring your jumping skis? I said, Pop, I always have skis, we'll jump. He said, well, the timing mechanism went out on the takeoff, and we have no way to judge the speed for the jumpers. So he said, would you go up and set the tracks? I get to the top, and Ted Farwell and somebody else says, make it real easy. We like where we're starting up here. Make a nice, easy jump. And at that time, Jim McKay was the first TV televised, and Jim McKay was running it. And so I went to the top where they were going to start, took off by accident, but I hit the best jump of my life. And immediately dropped the speed. 20 yards. If Ray's going that far, Torbjorn Nyggeseth and these guys from Norway are going to be landing in the flats out there by the lithium spring. But so I made my first jump and couldn't believe it. But when I went that far, ABC said, drop that speed down. These guys will be out jumping that hill. Once they dropped that speed down, almost 10, maybe 15 yards from the start. Nobody got even close to my jump. So Jim McKay used my jump almost at every introduction to the Olympics that were going to be televised. They ran my jump over and over and over again.
It's incredible, that you, even though you weren't the Olympic athlete, you still got plenty of coverage out there at the Olympics and gave Steamboat something to be proud of out there.
I was close, but no, after I made that jump, nobody else had this, the start I did. So.
Yeah. From there, you went back to your alma mater. You went back to the University of Wyoming, and you became the head coach of skiing there, which I think probably because you were a four-way athlete gave you advantage to recruit and to coach all of these people. What was the experience going from athlete to coach like for you?
Well, it was pretty amazing, but I had the best ski scholarship in the nation. I could take the best ski jumper in the nation or the best slalom skier, the best downhill skier, the best cross-country skier, and give them a 4-year scholarship, boardroom, tuition, and books. So I could pick out the best people in each event. I didn't have to teach them anything. They were the best. All I had to do is get them in shape. And boy, that was my goal. The first day everybody showed up and they all came out to ski practice the first day of school, and I says, "You'll be back here Sunday with your skis." And they looked up on the snowy range. There wasn't a drop of snow to ski up there. But on the backside of North Gap Lake, there was a glacier. Comes right out to a cliff and stopped. But it was a great glacier. It was going to be there all summer. So every weekend, we're going camping this weekend, no? We'll meet at Centennial at 8 or 7 in the morning and bring your alpine skis. We couldn't do jumping up there, but we did alpine and cross country. And I made them, we'd park where the Medicine Bowl ski area is now. It wasn't then. Carry all your skis, all your boots, all your equipment on your back, and we'd walk up to the North Cap Lake. It would usually take us about almost 3.5, maybe 4 hours to get to the snow, and then train all day. And when we started back out, I said, "Okay, now I want you to fill your packs completely full of rocks." And we're going back to the car. When I quit after 4 years, I had a pile of rocks up there almost as tall as this house that the kids had carried down from the North Gap Lake and set them to where now is the Medicine Bowl ski area.
Yeah.
But no, that was my whole goal, That's how Gordy trained us.
Yeah.
When we went to set a downhill, we had cross-country course training in the morning, and you had to create our cross-country course. So we'd go out and make a cross-country loop, then do a race, then come back, and Gordy would say, "Okay, now get your alpine skis. And get on the T-bar, we're going to the top of the Earl Mountain." So we got to that time, the T-bar was the only thing you had, and the T-bar didn't always reach the ground. So if you got on a T-bar with somebody heavier, you were going to end up spinning around, going back to the bottom and start over again. But we got to the top. Gordy said, "Okay, set your skis underneath that tree over there. Leave your ski boots on, and we're walking from here down to River Road. And don't step in anybody else's footprints, but be right next to them. The boot packet all the way down." We get down to River Road, and Gordy said, "Okay, now go walk up there and put your skis on and pack it."
And that was unique in those days. Back then there's stories of the Tour de France riders drinking wine and smoking cigarettes. I saw a picture recently of a football player at halftime with a beer in his hand. And, do you think that beyond what it taught you about fitness for sports and for skiing, what do you just think that kind of taught you for life that you were able to pass on to the athletes that you were coaching?
Well, if you want to go out and party tonight, just make sure you're up on Medicine Bowl at daylight in the morning.
Yeah.
If you're hungover, keep walking. Just put more rocks in your pack to get up there.
There's consequences
Physical
for your
fitness
choices.
was my whole goal because I had the best kids I could work with. I didn't have to teach them how to do anything. I just had to make sure they were in. In fact, one guy, Jay Martin, from St. Paul, Minneapolis, made the Olympic jumping team. I think it was in '64. And he told me one time, he said, he made that '64 jumping team because the shape I put him in.
And then from there, you went on from having an impact on the lives of college kids to the Apache Indian tribe in New Mexico, where you ended up going to kind of be the director of the Sierra Blanca ski resort. I think it was a
mountain manager.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a short stint that ended up being 2 decades.
6 months there, and I spent 21 years.
Yeah. And
then the first year I was down there, they asked me to be the state ski coach for New Mexico. The year I got there, they said, would you take over this little ski team? And I said, yeah. Practice starts tomorrow, but there's no snow. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's not all about snow.
And you stayed there for 20 years? You were
21 years. Started out running the school for the Indians. And it was supposed to be a 6-month school. And it lasted 21 years. But because then at that time, I think it was Reagan who was president. And the rule he had said is, if you got a pension, then you couldn't work. So none of them wanted to go to school and get a degree. And so basically every day I had to go down to the jailhouse and bail out the guys who were in jail to come to their school. And then towards the end of the class, they were dropping off because they didn't want the responsibility of having an education. And I put word out. I said, okay, anybody that shows up tomorrow gets to run the gondola. It was actually the first gondola built in America.
Oh, wow.
And they all showed up, and I had graduation. And last time I was down there was still one of the guys out of the original school still working.
Still doing it.
Yeah.
What an impact you've had on...
Pretty unique. And we ended up, just about all of our lift operators were the Apaches.
Well, then after you were there, you came back to the Yampa Valley, whether it was the Yampa Valley curse. Did you always know that you would end up back here in Steamboat?
Yeah. I mean, even when I finished the school down there, I was quitting the school to come home on Thanksgiving Day, 1964. And I'd gotten to be real good friends with Lloyd and L.B. Davis. He was the mayor. And he said, Ray, why don't you stick around for a couple of days? He said, there's a little gal been coming here for 2 years to teach skiing. Because at that time, Robert O. Anderson built the area, but he and his wife just, they wouldn't ski without skiing with all-day private with Fran. And he said, there's a little German gal that's been coming here for 2 years. We want you to meet her. So Thanksgiving Day at 10 o'clock in the morning, it snowed about 2.5, maybe 3 feet of snow. And I was waiting, all of a sudden, around the corner of this lift comes this little 5-foot-tall gal carrying a pair of 205 Caniso White Star. She couldn't hardly even reach out and touch the binding. And I said, hey, I'm going to go over here and open Capitan. Why don't you come over with me and put the first tracks on it? She looked down her nose at me. She said, I'm the queen of this mountain, and you're telling me where I can ski? 48 and a half years later, we were still married.
It's an incredible start. It's an amazing story. You did end up coming back here to the Yampa Valley, and you've raised your family here. You grew up, like we said, with so many incredible athletes around you. You were a great skier. You were at the Olympics where Billy Kidd got his first medal. you could have lived in town closer to the ski resort, but we're up here in Clark at Dell's Triangle 3. But you never fully leave skiing behind. You've got some stories of skiing Sand Mountain and things like that. Tell us a little bit about that, the experiences of Sand Mountain on skis.
Hillary came up to me, my daughter, and she said, I've got two friends of mine that just got off the Nordic Combined FIS team, and they want to ski Sand Mountain. Send them out. So they both showed up in their little narrow racing skis right off the World Cup and little low racing boots and put them on horses. About halfway up, Dan O'Meara, I think it was, said, we were going across this face, drop 30 feet down into the river if you slipped, and got up to under the cliffs, took the saddles off. Hillary and I put skins on our skis and started up, and these two guys just took off on their little narrow racing skis. And we went up to the top. We get up on top on that cornice, and it's at least 60 feet straight drop down onto a face that's almost that steep into a rock pile. And I turned to hey guys, hell, when I was jumping and running on the national team occasionally or now and then, I'd go off something like this without even thinking about it. And I turned, they were gone. I said, I was joking. And God, they had to go out there. They had to be 60 to 80 feet off the ground when they started down to the snow.
And I like what you've always said about going up Sand Mountain. It was, round trip 7 hours on a horse?
3.5 up and 3.5 back.
How much time on the
2
skins? 2
hours of climbing with skins on.
And then how much time of actual skiing?
5 minutes.
5 minutes of downhill skiing.
If you kept turning.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time we went up, old Orville Bedell, all he had was a pair of handmade skis that he had whittled out himself with a little groove down the bottom, no edges, a leather strap over his toe, and a part of an inner tube from a tire around his heel, and then in their overshoes. And I'm in my Northland ebonite skis, bear trap toes, and long thongs. You don't lift your heel much in long thongs when you're climbing. God, when we got to the top of that mountain, I thought my legs were going to just rip off my body, the muscles. But boy, when old Orville took off from the top, I mean, I took off first, dropped off the cliff, and just, getting all the turns in I could get in. I look up, and here comes old Orville. He had to have been in his 60s, late 60s or more. On these old wooden skis with wooden tips on them and his overshoes. But yeah, a little sandstorm after that, which we have quite a bit in the spring when that dust comes in. And that sand setting up on those tracks, his skis lasted almost a month. So after that, every time I got on that face, it wasn't just making turns, leaving the track.
Trying to leave the nice, pretty tracks behind.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, a lot of these stories that you've been telling, they're in your book. And this book is, I mean, it's an incredible history of your life and just some of the amazing things that you've seen here in Steamboat Springs and the Yampa Valley and beyond. But the book itself is named after the one thing that you're most known for, the man in the duster. You're wearing it right now. I have to know, what is the story behind this duster?
Well, I had always had a duster, but it was just, an Australian duster. And but they had a hell of a snowstorm and about 30 or 40 elk down in Mount Harris. And the elk got in a train track and couldn't get off. And it killed a bunch of them. And I went to somebody and said, do you mind if I go skin out a couple of those elk? Or you can take everything you want, but there'll be people up there tomorrow that we were told they could have the meat if they came up and butchered it. So I went up there and skinned out 7 elk and took them down to, it's where Natural Groceries is now. There was a little Western wear store there.
Yeah.
And a hell of a seamstress. And I took an Australian duster apart at the seams and laid it out on 7 elk hides, and took it to him and said, "Make me a coat out of these." And he made this, and then he put up the silk lining on the inside of it, you know, to make it a little warmer.
Yeah.
But he says, the amazing thing is when beef gets wet, it dries hard. Same with deer, but elk meat dries soft. And the first year he made this, I wore it one time here at the ranch, and the guys, they call themselves the Niners. It's Daryl Newcomb and that whole bunch. Says, "Ray, we want to go up Sand Mountain with you." I said, "Okay, come on out Sunday morning at daylight and bring your skis, and we'll pack them on a horse. And we'll put your boots in ski boots in the panniers." And we left them right here. And couldn't quite get up under the cliffs because the snow started getting so soft and the mud was so bad. We got off there, and the Niners and I climbed to the top. Well, the Niners, they were used to something, you know, for 2 hours, and then go have a beer and then go back to work. We got right to the hill up here. Almost all of them got off. And we got off and just walked the rest.
They were ready to be done.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Niners know every place you can make a track on that mountain. But they didn't realize this. You made quite a few tracks getting there.
And you've got the elk hide now with, is that a beaver pelt that goes across the back?
Yeah. When I first got it, that first time I took those guys, it rained. All poured. This coat probably weighed 80 pounds with the water in it. And it was all on my shoulders. So I thought, I've got to put something to shed the water on my shoulders. So we had somebody run over a beaver right up here. So I grabbed him and ran him downtown.
And of course, the coat has become a lot of who you are, as has this ranch. And this ranch was purchased and owned by your brother Delbert in 1960s. You took
62.
62. You took it over in the 1980s.
86.
Yeah, and now your son Perk runs it. I believe your grandson is next in line.
Turned over to Justin, his oldest son.
Yeah.
At the last year or year before, he said, "Opa, when I graduate next year from Montana State, I'm coming home to run the ranch." He said, "All of it. I'm going to take over the reservations, the whole surface, the hunting, the whole thing." And I said, "Have at it."
I mean, what does it mean to you to see this ranch now, 6 decades plus, to still be in the Heid family?
Still be. Yeah, and he graduates this year. He came home last year, and he said, he pulled up here, and I just had an outfit from Hollywood. It's summer house, winter house. Well, about 30 of them showed up here to set up that movie. And Justin pulled in from college right then. I said, "Justin, what? This is your first job. They want to do a movie here on the ranch with these Hollywood people and all of these people." And he said those, "This is what we do. This is what we will not do. This is," he says, there's no smoking on the ranch because this bone dry. One ash would burn the whole valley. So if you want to smoke, you got to be inside of a car. No smoking outside, no smoking on the ranch. He started out with that. It was the film crew from.
He took very ownership of this place and pride in it.
And that's the great thing about the 4-H here. They send those kids to Washington 2 or 3 times a year to give speeches. So it wasn't anything to get up in front of this bunch.
You've been through seeing Steamboat transition from kind of a ranching town that had a ski heritage with Carl Halson and the Winter Sports Club to really becoming a ski resort town that celebrates its ranching heritage.
What do you think about the way that the town has changed, and what do you want the newest generations to really remember about what it was?
Well, thanks to Jim Temple and John Fetcher, they installed the ranching attitude in the ski area when they started it. And we were able to continue with that, with those two guys pushing the thing all the way. Boy, all of a sudden, with the Winter Carnival and the street events, it just started to be the natural, you know. When all the ranchers would come to town, the first 10 days in February, with their hay wagons and all their livestock and their horses and their teams, I think there's maybe 2 cars in that first picture. The rest of it was all horse and buggies, you know. So from that, they were able to really hang in there, and thanks to the foresight of different people in town to keep that ball rolling.
Yeah. And what do you think it is about that ranching mindset that really makes Steamboat a special place that draws so many other people to come not just visit, but want to stay here, put roots here?
Oh, yeah. You know, it's so many people are promoting it, the ranchers and everybody involved, and the town and the street events, to close Highway 40, you know, for a week, which was then, at that time, almost the only state to state or ocean to ocean highway. And they still shut it down for the Winter Carnival. And boy, it's gone through lots of if, ands, buts, and whatnot. But there's a big enough heart in that bunch of people to keep that flying high.
Yeah, and lastly, you know, we just had Winter Carnival. You said you were downtown. Obviously, Winter Carnival's been around since you were a kid. When you're downtown and you see FM Lights is still there, or on the building where it says Boggs Hardware, Lions Drug, these places that are still around from your youth and your younger days, do you sit back and reminisce at all about what Steamboat was?
Yeah. You know, I mean, skiing was part of our, we got a grade on our report card in downhill slalom, jumping, and cross country. When I was in the first grade twice, the third grade twice, because I was dyslexic and I couldn't read or write. But thanks to skiing and the attitude of the town, here I am, 87 years old. Got my bachelor's degree and 30 hours towards my master's degree, thanks to skiing.
Thanks to everything that this town is. And thanks to you and your family for helping to be a part of what this town is. So I want to thank you very much for taking some time to join me. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And I want to put a quick reminder out there to everybody that if they haven't already, to certainly check out your book, Man Behind the Duster. It is an incredible look at Steamboat's past and in your life. So thank you very much.
There's 248 pictures in that book that nobody has ever seen. Because Irene, Lee put it all together for me. I finished to help the guy write a book, and his pictures went back to 1914. And people wouldn't read his story. They just looked at these pictures. So we probably won't put any pictures in your book. Then we opened up my mom's dresser drawer, and there was several thousand pictures of one of me, and now I'm 3 years old, carrying a pair of skis. Yeah. And so she went through a 7 years of putting all those stories, all those pictures into books, into the stories.
Well, and also beyond the book and the pictures in the book, your life and your family is currently being featured at Tread of Pioneers Museum, which is an incredible honor. Yeah.
They've got my saddle in there. Pete Carell built me that. He got ready to leave, moved to Montana. He says, Ray, I want to build you a saddle before I leave. So I gave you my grandmother's saddle. Try to copy this. what he charged me for that saddle was half what Delby paid for this whole ranch.
And now it's in Tread of Pioneers.
Yeah, it's on display down there for a year.
Yeah, well, hopefully you'll get that back. I'm sure you will.
That was kind of part of the deal.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ray. It's been a pleasure.